You know, sometimes the quietest mornings are the ones we end up missing the most. Julie never thought much about the way her day began. It was just part of life. She'd rise early while the sky was still sleepy, prepare a warm breakfast, and gently wake her husband. They had been together for years, and their little routines, like the way she always added a bit of cinnamon to his coffee, or how he never forgot to kiss her forehead before leaving, were small but steady signs of the love they'd built. Their home wasn't perfect. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it was full of warmth. Laughter often echoed through the kitchen as they joked over mismatched mugs. Evenings were quiet, shared over simple meals and stories about their day. It was the kind of life that didn't make headlines, but it was the kind of life that made hearts feel safe. Then, one evening, something shifted. Julie noticed it first in the silence. Her husband sat longer at the table, stirring his coffee but not drinking it. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. When she asked if everything was all right, he nodded, but the hesitation lingered. Later that week, the truth unfolded. His workplace had run into serious trouble, projects halted, contracts withdrawn, and just like that, the stability they had always counted on began to shake. The financial stress hit them quickly. The numbers didn't add up anymore. Their plans, their comfort, even their peaceful mornings, suddenly, it all felt fragile. Julie felt it too, of course. That subtle anxiety that crept in at the end of the day. The weight of uncertainty that hung in the air like mist. But rather than panic, she held on to something deeper, a belief in the strength of their bond. She reminded herself, this man sitting across from her was still the same person who once waited in the rain just to walk her home. He had supported her through her hardest days. Now it was her turn. She didn't say anything dramatic. She didn't make a grand promise. She simply reached out, squeezed his hand, and said, "We'll figure this out, together." That moment didn't fix everything, but it was the beginning of something new, a quiet strength forming underneath the pressure. In Julie's heart, she knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. But what mattered more was this: they still had each other. And sometimes, love shows up not in the easy days, but in the days when things feel uncertain and someone chooses to stay anyway. The days that followed were different, not in any loud or obvious way, but in the little shifts that Julie could feel like a change in the weather. Her husband, once full of quiet energy and thoughtful gestures, seemed more withdrawn. He still went through the motions, eating breakfast, leaving for meetings, coming home in the evening, but something about him had faded. There was a weight in his steps, a stillness in his eyes. Julie recognized it as the kind of stress people don't often speak about, the kind that slowly takes root when life throws too much at once. And yet, she didn't panic. She observed, she listened, and she began to ask herself, what can I do not to fix everything, but to walk beside him through this? Julie wasn't someone who saw herself as especially bold, but when it came to protecting the peace they had built, she found a quiet courage. She sat down one afternoon and carefully organized every document, every letter, every piece of correspondence related to the situation. Then, with a steady hand and a heart full of hope, she reached out to the people involved, the ones her husband had been too overwhelmed to face. She didn't demand, she didn't argue. She simply asked to talk. Her first call didn't go well. The second one was met with polite dismissal. A few emails went unanswered, and for a brief moment, Julie wondered if she had made a mistake. But deep down, she believed that sincerity still had value. That kindness, persistence, and respectful communication could still open doors, even in the most complicated situations. Meanwhile, at home, things were quiet. Her husband tried to hide how he was feeling, but Julie could tell. The way he lingered by the window, or how he sat silently after dinner, it was as if he was holding his breath, unsure of how to move forward. Julie didn't confront him with pressure or questions. Instead, she brought calm into their space. She kept the mornings warm with familiar breakfasts, kept their evenings soft with small gestures, his favorite tea, a light-hearted show they used to enjoy, a story from the past that made them both smile. She didn't want to change him. She only wanted him to know, you don't have to carry this alone. Sometimes, the strongest kind of support isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, gentle, persistent, and it's built not from knowing all the answers, but from being willing to show up again and again with compassion. Julie didn't yet know how things would unfold, but she was sure of one thing. As long as they kept choosing each other, there was always a way forward. Julie sat quietly at the kitchen table, surrounded by notepads and unanswered emails. The earlier calls hadn't gone well. Some were polite refusals. Others didn't respond at all. But she wasn't discouraged. Her goal wasn't to erase the problem, only to ask for understanding, a little space to help her husband breathe again. She refined her message, speaking with calmness and sincerity. Each time, she tried again, not with demands, but with honesty. She explained who they were, how hard her husband had worked, and how much this second chance would mean. At home, the silence lingered. Her husband seemed distant, carrying unspoken worry. Julie didn't press him. Instead, she brought warmth into their home, his favorite tea, soft conversations, reminders of better days. Little by little, he began to respond. One evening, he said quietly, "You didn't have to do all this." Julie smiled. "I know, but I want to." In that small exchange, something changed. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. The healing had begun not just financially, but emotionally. Julie realized that sometimes love isn't loud. It's steady. It's showing up again and again, not because you have to, but because you care. It happened gently like morning light easing into a dark room. One day, as Julie set the table, her husband joined her earlier than usual. He looked more present. He even poured her coffee. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Then came the breakthrough. One of the companies Julie had reached out to finally agreed to meet. She went in prepared, not with anger or desperation, but with honesty. She shared their story calmly, respectfully, and with genuine hope. And to her surprise, they listened. They didn't erase the problem, but they offered something more valuable: flexibility, a revised agreement, a chance to recover. When Julie got home, her husband was in the garden, quietly tending to the plants. She joined him and shared the news. He looked at her, stunned, and said softly, "I don't know what I would have done without you." Julie simply replied, "You don't have to do anything without me." That evening, the house felt alive again, not because the problems had vanished, but because they were facing them together. Laughter returned. So did hope. Julie had learned something lasting. Love isn't about perfection or ease. It's about presence. It's the quiet strength that shows up in the hardest moments and stays. And that was enough.